Prashant, I'll start with you. Where is the infrastructure at this moment in time, and how ready is it for mass deployment of this vaccine?
So the good thing is that we've been working on this. The OWS colleagues, Pfizer, McKesson have been working at this scenario for at least a few months now. So we have at least the basics in place. When we think about infrastructure, oftentimes we tend to think too much on physical infrastructure, which is, do we have the fridges, do we have the planes and trucks in place? But I think what will be important, and in my opinion very crucial, is also to understand, do we have the information infrastructure in place? Do we have the right precision of forecasts coming from the states of how much they need, what needs to be shipped to them? And then secondly, what will be our distribution plan, and is that being communicated appropriately to all the actors in the supply chain?
Ting-Long, ostensibly, the fact that Pfizer and BioNTech are out in front of this and not in a crowded field with many other vaccines potentially being approved and authorized around the same time, that would allow a seemingly smoother distribution schedule. How will that work?
Well, I feel like the fact that Pfizer is getting so close, that just makes things easier. Because part of the challenge in manufacturing and distributing COVID-19 vaccines come from having such a crowded field of candidates, because we wanted to manufacture and also assemble vaccines even before they got approved. We simply did not have enough vials to hold all the vaccines. When you think about having almost 200 candidates. Now, when you think about the possibility that distribution and also healthcare professionals have to deal with multiple type of vaccines, it just complicates things and makes mistakes more likely to happen. Now, with news like this, we feel like we'll have a narrowing field, and so it's just easier to keep track of who received which vaccine, and so the challenge is much lesser compared to before.
So, Prashant, given the limited number of vials and freezer farms, does that mean that Pfizer and BioNTech will have a lock on some of those resources, whereas companies like Novavax and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson will have to fight for some of those resources?
So I think what we've got to keep in mind is that in the equilibrium, we may end up benefiting from having more than one vaccine. Yes, there is a shortage of many ancillary supplies, critical input materials, such as what Ting-Long is referring to. But I think most of the leading candidates have worked out those details. They have sourced enough vials. They have sourced other ancillary supplies that are needed. I think the real challenge will come in the second phase. So the first phase of distribution, which is targeted to a small segment of the population, I think most of the developers have enough supplies. When we reach to the second phase and the more longer-term equilibrium phase, that's when it will be a question of who's able to negotiate contracts with glass vial manufacturers or other things that are needed for the longer term. And that's where I think the front runner or the first entrant, typically has some advantage. But that's when the market is operating without any public intervention. This is a market in which Operation Warp Speed and globally CEPI have worked extensively to manage some of the coordination challenges that are being talked about. So I think with that kind of public coordination attached to it, we will hopefully have a good redistribution of supplies. And I guess the bigger question still remains, freezer farms and cold chain equipment, are we going to get ready for a state where we start installing that in every location? Or are we going to continue working with the assumption that we'll only have a few of those and then everywhere else will just keep it in a specialized container or a box? That's, again, a scenario that can work for a short-term or maybe an intermediate-term distribution plan, but is not a scenario we can work with when we're talking about vaccinating 300 million Americans with two doses. So for that, we do need more infrastructure investment, which hasn't started happening as much as we would like.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.